Hi, I'm Darren Hefty. I farm in southeast South Dakota, and this is my blank slate field. I'm going into year 3 of owning this ground. Let me give you just a little bit of background here before I tell you where things are moving to. I bought this ground in August of 2009. It had been cash rented out for, the best I could tell, at least the last 25 years. It was rented out on a year-to-year basis. Whoever had paid the most money, for the most part, got the ground. So, as you can guess, the ground wasn't exactly treated like ground that you own and it's right beside your place. There are a number of things that were done that probably wouldn't have been done if somebody actually owned this ground. One of those things was heavy conventional tillage. This particular field has about 73 feet of drop in a 60-acre field. That's a lot of slope to deal with. As you can tell in the background here, you can see that I've got some terraces here. Those terraces finally got put in, I think in the late 1990s, as best I can tell. So the ground had been really abused in terms of the organic matter. It's really run down. There are areas of the field as low as 1.5% organic matter, but also the topsoil. I had a fence line down on the southeast corner of my place that you could just see maybe the top foot of the posts. That was it. There's that much soil that had washed down into the fence line, and it never got cleaned up because it was a tenant just year after year, somebody different in here, and nobody really took the time to clean things up and bring them back to the way they were. So as you can guess also with my fertility levels, they were almost non-existent. I've never seen potassium levels so low. It was down under 50 parts per million, which in this part of the country is really unheard of. And also my phosphorus levels were as low as 1 part per million, which if you don't know, soils labs don't put zeros on the soil test. So 1 part per million could very well have been a 0. I joke about that now, but believe me, it is a serious consideration on this farm. Well, after 2 years of farming, here's what I've done. I've raised continuous corn here the first 2 years. So it was soybeans the year that I bought the ground. Now the crops that I've managed on this farm have been 2 corn crops, and I plan for 2012 to raise corn again. The reason that I'm doing that is my #1 focus on this field is building up the organic matter levels. They're as low as 1.5% in parts of the field, and I want to get those levels up into the 5s, if not even 6. The organic matter levels in the field are very important to me for a number of reasons. Organic matter is so good for supporting microbial life, for reducing compaction and improving soil tilth. All those things that you think are positives, organic matter represents those things. But a couple of things that are dollars and cents to me are the nutrients that are being released by mineralization of that organic matter every year. Each 1% of organic matter releases 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen, 4 to 7 pounds of phosphate, and 2 to 3 pounds of sulfur every year. So at 1.5%, I've got pretty low levels. I'm getting maybe 30 pounds of nitrogen, maybe 6 pounds of phosphate, maybe 3 pounds of sulfur. I'm not going to turn those down, but I'd much rather see if I could get that organic matter level up into the 5s. Let's say I can raise my organic matter level by 4% in this field. If I can do that, that's another 80 to 120 pounds of free nitrogen I'm going to get every year. That's a huge deal for me. When you look at the phosphate, that's another 16 to 28 pounds of phosphate I'm going to get for free every year. The other thing with organic matter for me that's important is the water holding capacity. I've got very hilly, rolly ground, as you can see with this field. And when you've got ground like that and it's dry land, non-irrigated farm ground, you've got to try and hold all the moisture you can on those hilltops because they're going to dry out during the summer. Now, I farm in South Dakota as well, so we aren't normally blessed with an abundance of rainfall to begin with. So you think about organic matter and water holding capacity. Each 1% increase in organic matter can hold 4% more water. So if I can increase the organic matter again in this field by 4% over time, that's 16% more water I can hold on those hilltops. That's huge for me. I don't have to mention how much more yield potential that's going to bring. It's quite a bit. Corn has about 5 times the root mass of soybeans, so by planting more corn here and less soybeans for the short term anyway, I'm going to build my organic matter levels. I will eventually get into a rotation of crops, but for a few years at least, I want to make sure that I'm planting a lot of corn here to try and have plenty of residue and hopefully build that organic matter level up. We are seeing it start to creep up in the first couple of years. Now to the tillage that I mentioned, I've been using strip till. My focus of using the strip till is just dealing with that residue a little bit. We're using a corn head that's a chopping head. So we're chopping all those pieces up into about 6-inch chunks, and they're spread evenly across my field. By doing some strip till, I'm creating a black strip that's approximately 8 inches wide on my 30-inch rows. So I've got a little black strip that warms up faster in the spring and also gives me a better chance to have an even competition between all my corn seeds. They aren't going to have to fight over a big chunk of corn residue that happens to lay over the row. I'm going to eliminate that issue. So I've got a nice even seed bed where all my seeds have an equal chance to survive. So there are many things I'm trying to do on the organic matter side. Now let's talk fertility just a minute. I've got soil pHs in this field as high as 8.4. In general, I'm fighting high pH for a couple of reasons. One, on my hilltops, it's due to erosion. I'm down to the subsoil in some cases. In my low areas of the field, I've got water issues. So I'm going to work on those low areas of the field by installing subsurface drainage tile, hopefully during the crop season in 2012, so I can start remedying those problems. But my hilltops, that high pH is a little tougher fight. So I'm trying to build up my organic matter and build fertility on those hilltops to try and overcome that. One of the ways that I'm getting fertility into my crop is by using highly efficient fertilizer. Now I could broadcast MAP or DAP or potash out on my field, but a lot of that doesn't come available and often gets tied up before my crop can even use it. So I'm using agriculture liquid products, Pro Germinator and Sure-K and Micro 500 in the furrow. So I'm getting my P, K, and micros all taken care of in a highly available form that I know my crop is going to maximize the usage of this year. With nitrogen, that's not such a big deal. I'm using liquid nitrogen sources that I can put on across the top of my crop in a broadcast form, and I'm putting my pre-emerge herbicides out at the same time. I'm also using some access so I can get my sulfur needs taken care of all in one application. So that's a nice way to do the nitrogen, sulfur, and also get my pre-emerge herbicide done in one pass. Again, my P, K, and micros are all being done with the planter in furrow. The last couple of years I've raised 150 bushel corn on this ground, which the previous owner told me that was impossible. It was never going to happen. Nobody had ever raised 150 bushel corn on this eroded, kind of junky ground. And we did that. The first year I was amazed that I could get 150 bushel corn. The second year I was shooting for higher yields, but I was blessed with hail, not once, but twice. I lost all of the leaves all the way down to the ear, but I was very fortunate the hail came after my corn was completely pollinated, so I still had a pretty successful crop. This year I'm shooting for even higher yield levels, and I know I'm going to get there with the power that agriculture liquid fertilizer has given me in the furrow. I saw it in year 2, even more so than I did in year 1. I saw plant health throughout the season. I saw my crop staying green right up until harvest. I didn't see the potassium deficiency that hit me really mid-season year 1. Last year I was able to make it till just about harvest before there was enough cannibalization in the plant to start showing a little bit of potassium deficiency in some areas of the field. So this year I know I'm getting past some of the fertility hurdles. I'm going to stay the course. I'm using 5 gallons of Pro Germinator, 5 gallons of Sure-K, and in this case I'm drastically low in micronutrients. I'm using a full gallon of Micro 500, which is more than my agriculture liquid rep says I need to use, but I think I need a little bit more micros to try and build things up in my ground. The blank slate field lies just a few miles west of the South Dakota-Minnesota border. And I know we've got resistant weeds not too far east into Minnesota, and there's some starting to pop up in South Dakota as well. So I want to manage the blank slate in a sustainable manner. In terms of weed control, I'm using multiple modes of action with my pre-emerge application. In general, I've been using Harness along with Hornet in a product called Triple Flex, or I may even put a little bit of atrazine out here too, depending on what we see for weed mix year to year. Post-emerge, I'm using a tank mix partner with my Roundup. In general, I've been using a Callisto or Lotus type product, one of those bleachers that does a nice job being safe on my crop, yet is still effective on the pigweed species, especially post-emerge. From a disease and insect standpoint, I'm very concerned about corn rootworms. There are a lot of corn rootworm issues in our area, and guys that are doing continuous corn are obviously more susceptible to having a problem than farmers who are using a crop rotation. In my situation, I'm using a good strong rate of a soil-applied insecticide at planting time to try and wipe out as many of the corn rootworms as I can. I'm also using a hybrid that does have corn rootworm traits in it, so we can try to fight with a trait and with an insecticide. So hopefully I can kill quite a few of the rootworms before they ever take a bite out of my roots. Now in terms of fighting disease, I'm of course going to use a seed treatment when I'm planting my seed, but I'm also spraying foliar fungicides. Now on our farm we haven't seen a huge gain with foliar fungicides yet at the V5 timing or at tasseling, but I'm going to do probably both. I'm definitely doing a V5 fungicide, and if conditions are right, I will spray fungicide again after my corn's completely tasseled to try and fight off any disease I may get, because in corn on corn, again, just like with the bugs, I'm more susceptible to having disease issues. One of the questions I get a lot about the blank slate field is, how does this strip till work and how are you pulling soil samples out there? Do you pull it right in the row where you put fertilizer last year, or do you pull it halfway in between, or do you mix those samples? And really, for guys that are using agriculture liquid, whether they're in conventional till or strip till, this gets to be a concern. Where do I pull those samples in order to figure out what I'm going to need for next year? Well, for us, we're typically planting a row of corn and then we're moving over 15 inches. And year 2, we're planting halfway in between. And year 3, we're going to be right back on where our corn stalks were from 2 years ago. Now, we did strip till in the fall just for the tillage. I wasn't putting any fertilizer on at that time. I'm just tilling up the strip. And you can really see in this field that the strip stayed nice and black, and my row cleaner should be able to easily move any little bit of residue that blew back over the row over the winter. When we're pulling the soil samples though, I like to do some in the row and some halfway in between. What we've seen is not a whole lot of difference. There's a little bit in areas. I did a few strips where I put on some extra fertilizer this year, and I certainly see that show up in the samples, but for the most part the samples in the row and halfway in between the row are about the same, because I'm feeding the crop with what it needs for nutrients this year. This isn't a program like, oh, I throw on 500 pounds of MAP, so I'm hoping to build. Yeah, you may notice some of that phosphorus on your soil test, but what good does that do you if it's not getting into your crop? For me, I'm focusing on what do I need to feed this crop so I'm successful this year, and I don't want to put a whole bunch of nutrients out there that I don't need or that could potentially lead to any kind of pollution issue. If I have some more erosion in this field, which I shouldn't with the management practices I'm using, I don't want some of that topsoil to move away and take phosphorus with it. I want to try and do things as responsible as I can. One of my favorite quotes is from Teddy Roosevelt, who is well known as being a great conservationist in our country. And he said, conservation means development as much as it does protection. And you look at this farm and how it's changed over the years. If it was farmed just as it was, we'd just be left with erosion and poor production from here on out. But one of my previous landowners here had the foresight to put in some terraces. Granted, it would have been better if it happened a long time in advance of when he did it, but he did it. And that has helped slow the problem down a little bit. Now I'm able to go with reduced tillage, planting a different crop rotation than had been done before, and I'm focusing on how can I make this ground better rather than just keeping it the same. Because my dad always taught me growing up, you're doing one thing or the other, Darren. Either you're getting better or you're getting worse. There's no such thing as staying the same. And that's what I'm taking to heart with this blank slate field. I don't want to stay the same. I want to continuously get better, and hopefully someday I can pass this ground on to one of my kids or someone in the next generation that will keep that work going forward. Well, I'm really excited about 2012 to see what kind of crop I can grow on the blank slate field and on the rest of our farm. But especially on ground like this that's been down in the dumps for years, that I'm working on building up and bringing back to life. It's really exciting to see what one more year of progress will bring. So we'll keep you updated on everything going on the blank slate field and more.